Welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving deep into a biological anomaly that has recently rewritten the record books of zoology. We are going to talk about alcohol tolerance, but not in humans. We are looking at the vast, buzzing tavern of the animal kingdom to find out who the true heavyweight champion really is. For decades, biologists and zoologists operated under the assumption that certain mammals held the title for nature's most robust drinker. You might have heard of the pen-tailed tree shrew, or perhaps the common hamster as the record holders. But a groundbreaking study released in late 2024 from Tel Aviv University has completely shattered those records. It turns out the undisputed king of consumption is not a mammal at all. It is an insect. Specifically, the Oriental Hornet, scientifically known as Vespa orientalis. This is a story about a creature that can consume pure ethanol at concentrations that would be fatal to a human, yet it flies straight, builds its colony with geometric precision, and shows absolutely zero signs of a hangover. To truly appreciate this biological marvel, we need to first set the stage and look at the history of the drunken zoo. We have to understand that alcohol, specifically ethanol, is not a human invention. It is a natural byproduct of fermentation. In nature, wherever you have sugar, like fruit, nectar, or sap, and you introduce yeast, you get alcohol. For millions of years, animals have been navigating a landscape filled with these natural bars. A rotting mango on the forest floor, or the fermented nectar of a palm tree, represents a massive calorie reward. You have to realize that ethanol contains nearly twice the energy density of sugar. So, for a starving animal, the scent of fermentation is actually the scent of survival. However, this energy comes with a toxic price, which is inebriation. Evolutionary biologists have long proposed something called the drunken monkey hypothesis. This suggests that even our own primate ancestors evolved an attraction to the scent of ethanol because it acted as a GPS, leading them to ripe, calorie-rich fruit. We are biologically wired to seek it out. But, like most animals, we have a biological limit. If we cross that limit, coordination fails, reflexes slow down, and in the wild, that usually means you get eaten. Before the Oriental Hornet took the stage, we had other contenders for the title of Iron Liver. Let's look at the previous champions. First, there was the pen-tailed tree shrew, native to Malaysia. This small mammal spends its nights sipping fermented palm nectar, which is roughly equivalent to beer in terms of alcohol content. While they consume huge amounts relative to their body weight, they rarely show signs of drunkenness. Then, perhaps the most surprising former champion is the Syrian hamster. Hamsters hoard fruit in their burrows. Naturally, that fruit ferments over time. To cope with this, hamsters evolved a liver capable of processing alcohol with incredible efficiency. A hamster can consume the human equivalent of a case of wine and still walk a straight line. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the cautionary tales, like the Bohemian waxwings. These birds voraciously eat fermented rowan berries in the winter. Unfortunately, they often become so intoxicated that they fly into windows or cannot perch, leading to fatal accidents. But here is the catch. Even the hamster, with its impressive liver, has a breaking point. The Oriental Hornet, as science has recently discovered, seemingly does not. Let's get to know our protagonist, the Vespa orientalis. This hornet is not your average garden pest. It is a creature of extremes, evolved for the harsh, sun-drenched environments of Southwest Asia, North Africa, and parts of Southern Europe. Before we even discuss alcohol, it is worth noting that the Oriental Hornet is already a biological celebrity. Years ago, scientists discovered that the yellow stripe on the hornet's abdomen contains xanthopterin. This is a pigment that absorbs solar radiation and converts it into electrical energy. In a sense, these hornets are living solar panels, using the sun to boost their metabolic activity. This high-energy lifestyle requires massive amounts of fuel. Oriental hornets are social wasps. The workers are relentless foragers. They hunt other insects, including honeybees, which makes them a dreaded pest for beekeepers. They scavenge carrion and meat for protein to feed their larvae. But for their own energy, they need carbohydrates. Their search for sugar leads them to the most potent sources available, which are overripe, rotting, fermenting fruit. We are talking about grapevines, date palms, and fig trees. In these environments, alcohol concentrations can spike well above the 4 or 5% found in beer, sometimes reaching much higher localized concentrations in drying fruit. To survive this diet, the hornet had to evolve. This brings us to the Tel Aviv study of 2024. A team of researchers led by Dr. Sofia Buchebdi and Professor Aaron Levine at Tel Aviv University's School of Zoology decided to test the limits of this adaptation. They suspected the hornets were tolerant, but they had no idea of the magnitude. The methodology of their experiment was brutal in its simplicity. They essentially created a hornet bar in the laboratory. They isolated male hornets and offered them sucrose, or sugar solutions, spiked with varying concentrations of ethanol. They started with a control group getting pure sugar water. Then, the light drinkers getting 5 to 10% ethanol, similar to beer or wine. Then the heavy drinkers at 20% ethanol, like a fortified wine. And finally, the impossible tier, 80% ethanol. For context, 80% ethanol is biologically hostile. It is a potent antiseptic. In most organisms, liquid of that strength destroys cell membranes and causes immediate, fatal toxicity. The researchers watched and waited for the hornets to stumble, pass out, or die. But they didn't. The results were a biological impossibility. First, let's look at survival rates. The hornets drinking the 80% ethanol solution lived just as long as the hornets drinking pure water. There was no spike in mortality. They were consuming a substance that is essentially poison to most life forms as their primary calorie source, and they were thriving. Secondly, the team monitored the hornets' behavioral integrity. Usually, intoxicated insects display agonistic or aggressive behavior, or they lose the coordination required for the complex geometry of nest building. The alcohol-fed hornets built their paper combs with the same precision as the sober ones. They displayed no slur, no stagger, and no unwarranted aggression. To understand what was happening inside the hornets, the scientists used carbon isotope labeling. This allowed them to mark the alcohol molecules and track them through the hornets' bodies. The results were shocking. The hornets were not just tolerating the alcohol, they were metabolizing it at record-breaking speeds. The ethanol was broken down into energy and exhaled as carbon dioxide almost as fast as it was ingested. The study concluded that Vespa orientalis is the only known animal in nature capable of chronically consuming such high concentrations of alcohol, with zero negative health effects. So the big question is, how do they do it? What is the mechanism? The answer lies in a perfect storm of genetics and symbiosis. The primary weapon in any animal's arsenal against alcohol is an enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase, or ADH. This enzyme breaks down the toxic ethanol molecule into acetaldehyde, which is also toxic, and then quickly into acetate, or vinegar, which can be used for energy. In humans, we have ADH, but it works at a fixed rate. If we drink faster than our enzymes can work, alcohol builds up in the blood and reaches the brain. The genomic analysis of the Oriental Hornet revealed that they possess multiple copies of the ADH gene, specifically NADP positive dependent types. It is as if their liver, or the insect equivalent known as the fat body, is a factory with 50 assembly lines running simultaneously, whereas a human might only have one. They strip the toxicity out of the alcohol before it ever has a chance to reach their nervous system. But there is another layer to this. It is the brewery in the gut. Perhaps the most fascinating discovery is the relationship between the hornet and the yeast itself. The hornets share a mutualistic relationship with Saccharomyces cerevisiae, also known as brewer's yeast. This is the exact same yeast humans use to bake bread and brew beer. The hornets act as taxis for the yeast. Since yeast cannot fly, it needs to move from one fruit to another to reproduce. The hornets eat the yeast, harbor it in their intestines, which acts as a safe, warm incubator, and then regurgitate it onto new fruit sources. Because the hornets have been carrying this alcohol-producing yeast for millions of years, they have co-evolved with the alcohol it produces. The yeast ferments the fruit inside the hornet and outside on the tree. The hornet, in turn, gained the ability to treat the alcohol not as a poison, but as a high-octane fuel source. Let's perform a comparative analysis to visualize this using the wobbling scale, a scientific metric for animal drunkenness. Humans generally hit a dangerous limit at around 0.4% blood alcohol content, risking coma or death. Fruit flies lose their posture and become unable to fly with low doses. Honeybees get drunk on moderate amounts and are often barred from re-entering the hive by guards until they sober up. The tree shrew has a high tolerance for its natural diet, but risks organ damage over time. The hamster has a very high tolerance, capable of drinking the equivalent of 20 wines, but can eventually be made to wobble if alcohol is injected, bypassing the liver. The Oriental Hornet, however, sits at the extreme end. At 80% concentration, there is no observable effect, no mortality, and no behavioral change. The hamster relies on a massive liver-to-body size ratio, but the hornet relies on hyper-efficient enzymatic breakdown. The hornet is not just holding its liquor, it is using the liquor as rocket fuel. Why would nature select for such an extreme trait? Evolution rarely wastes energy on superpowers unless they are necessary. There are three main theories. First is the caloric gold mine. As we mentioned, ethanol is calorie-dense. In the arid, resource-scarce environments where these hornets live, passing up a rotting, fermented fig because it is too boozy could mean starvation. By evolving to drink the strongest liquor nature can produce, the hornet unlocks a food source that is poisonous to its competitors. It is an exclusive dining club. Second is antimicrobial protection. Social insects live in crowded, humid nests which are perfect breeding grounds for bacteria and fungi that could wipe out the colony. Ethanol is a potent antimicrobial agent. By consuming and regurgitating high alcohol substances, the hornets may be effectively sterilizing their gut and potentially their nest environment, keeping the colony healthy. Third is the yeast farming hypothesis. Some researchers suggest the hornets are essentially primitive farmers. By tolerating the alcohol produced by the yeast, they can carry the yeast to new food sources, seed them, wait for the yeast to break down the complex sugars into accessible alcohol and simple sugars, and then return to feast. While the image of a hornet drinking absinthe is amusing, the implications of this study are profound for human medicine. Alcohol use disorder kills millions of people annually. Research is often limited by the fact that most lab animals, like mice and rats, naturally dislike alcohol or suffer from it differently than humans. The Oriental Hornet offers a new biological model. By studying the specific gene expressions and enzyme structures that allow the hornet to metabolize ethanol so rapidly, scientists hope to find new pathways for treating alcohol toxicity in humans. Could we one day engineer a treatment that mimics the hornet's ADH efficiency to treat acute alcohol poisoning? Furthermore, understanding how a biological organism converts ethanol into energy with near-perfect efficiency could inspire new bioengineering applications in fuel cells or fermentation technology. In conclusion, the Oriental Hornet has long been feared for its painful sting and its devastation of honeybee colonies. But this new research adds a layer of grudging respect to the pest. It is a metabolic marvel, a creature that has turned a potent toxin into a lifeline. In the great tavern of evolution, the Oriental Hornet sits alone at the high-stakes table, downing shots of 80% ethanol that would lay low an elephant, all while keeping its wings steady and its colony thriving. It serves as a reminder that nature's adaptations are often stranger and more robust than we could ever imagine. So, the next time you see a hornet hovering over a fallen, rotting fruit in the late summer sun, know that it isn't just eating. It is likely engaging in a bout of drinking that would put the most hardened sailor to shame, and it won't even feel it in the morning.